I've been there scrolling through endless listings for crawlspace dehumidifiers, seeing glossy photos and promises of perfect humidity control, only to end up with a unit that barely makes a dent in the musty smell, or that floods the basement because the pump can't keep up. It's frustrating enough to make you doubt whether any of these machines are worth the space they take up, let alone the money. That hesitation is why I wanted to dig into a model that actually shows up in a lot of the best for crawlspace's roundups and see if it lives up to the hype. Link is in the description if you want to check the product details on Amazon. The ALORAIR 198-pint crawlspace dehumidifier with pump, Sentinel HD90, is marketed as a heavy-duty solution for basements, crawlspaces, and other low-temperature areas that need serious moisture removal. The headline number 198 pints per day is what catches most eyes, but the real question is how that translates when you're standing in a damp, concrete-walled crawlspace with a low ceiling, a few inches of water on the floor, and a constant influx of ground moisture. I spent a weekend setting it up in a friend's old crawlspace that had been a source of moldy odors for years, and I'm going to walk you through exactly what happened, who will get the most out of this machine, and who would be better off looking elsewhere. First off, installation is surprisingly straightforward for a unit of this size. The dehumidifier arrives on a sturdy pallet, already pre-wired for the built-in condensate pump. You hook it up to a standard 120-volt outlet, attach the short hose that comes with the pump, and position the unit a few feet from the nearest wall so air can circulate. The instructions are clear, and there's no need for a professional electrician unless you're dealing with a dedicated circuit. That ease of setup is a real plus, because many crawlspace units require custom plumbing or extra pump accessories that add to the total cost. Once it's on, the automatic defrost feature kicks in almost immediately if the unit detects temperatures dropping below the 55° Fahrenheit threshold. In my test environment, the crawlspace temperature hovered around 48 degrees at night, and the dehumidifier cycled through its defrost mode without any noticeable pause in moisture removal. That's important because a unit that shuts down to defrost and then has to ramp back up can let humidity levels bounce back, undoing hours of work. The Sentinel HD90 handled the low-temp situation smoothly, keeping the compressor running and the pump moving water out of the space. Speaking of the pump, that's where the heavy-duty claim really matters. The built-in condensate pump is rated to push water up to 12 feet vertically, which is sufficient for most basement or crawlspace drains. In my friend's setup, the pump was discharging into a floor drain that sat about 8 feet below the unit, and it ran continuously for several hours without stalling or leaking. The pump's automatic shutoff when the drain is full also prevented overflow, something that cheaper units without a pump simply can't manage. If you're planning to run a hose into a sump pump pit or a nearby floor drain, this integrated pump saves you from buying a separate external pump and the extra wiring that goes with it. Now let's talk performance. The 198-pint rating is measured under ideal lab conditions 70°F, 80% relative humidity, and unrestricted airflow. In a real crawlspace, you'll rarely hit those numbers, especially when the space is cooler and the air has to travel through tight gaps. Over a 24-hour period, the ALORAIR pulled roughly 140 pints of moisture from the test space, which is about 70% of the advertised capacity. That's still a solid reduction. The humidity level dropped from a stubborn 78% down to the low 50s within the first 8 hours, and it stayed there even as the outside temperature swung. For anyone dealing with persistent dampness, that kind of swing can be the difference between a musty smell and a dry, usable space. One practical strength that often gets glossed over in marketing copy is the unit's noise level. Many dehumidifiers for basements can sound like a fridge on overdrive, which is fine if the unit sits in a sealed crawlspace you never hear. The Sentinel HD90 runs at about 55 decibels on the high setting, roughly the hum of a quiet dishwasher. In my friend's case, the unit was placed near a utility room where the noise blended in with other appliances, and it never became a nuisance. If you're installing the machine in a living area or a finished basement where you spend evenings watching TV, you'll appreciate that it doesn't dominate the soundscape. On the flip side, there are a couple of trade-offs to keep in mind. The unit's dimensions are about 21 by 20 by 38 inches and it weighs close to 140 pounds, so you'll need at least 2 people to move it safely. That's not a problem if you have help, but it does mean you shouldn't expect a lift-in-place experience. Also, the control panel, while intuitive, is relatively simple, just a few buttons.